If you're new to our growth series sessions, my name is Tony Yang. I run the growth practice at Mucker Capital. We're an early stage venture firm. Series A and earlier is usually where we write our first check in. We work with a lot of B2B SaaS companies, but also we do work with consumer facing startups as well. And essentially, my job is to help our portfolio companies grow their company. Today's star of today's show is our friend Blue Bowen from G2. G2 is a review site that has been around ever since I've been early on in my career. Review site for software, and I'll let Blue talk more about it, but they also have different capabilities such as intent data and all that stuff. But Blue, as a research principal, covers the AI sales landscape. So he's the perfect guy for us to talk about today's topic. Blue, welcome. Super excited to have you. And I'm going to stop talking because you're going to be sharing with us a lot of the insights that you've gathered over the last year or so. So, Blue, welcome.
Thanks so much, Tony. Pleasure to be here, and hope to provide some good insights and kind of guidance as we're all navigating this AI-enabled world, particularly sales tools. AI is everywhere. I don't think it's going anywhere. So I'm excited to dive in and learn what kind of tools startups in particular can use to accelerate growth, especially with limited headcounts, limited resources. AI is a kind of a great equalizer in terms of providing a lot of value and maybe appearing a little bit bigger and more resourceful. So excited to get into this. Tony stole a bit of my thunder. Wanted to just provide a quick overview about what G2 is. G2 is the world's largest and most trusted software buyer place. More than 90 million people visit annually. Software buyers, the people you are hoping to prospect and sell to, come to G2 to learn about products, different market categories, and read reviews from their peers, the people they trust the most about what they like, dislike, and how they're using them. G2 is 100% powered by validated reviews written by real users of business software to help buyers discover the best software to meet their business needs. Our rankings are not subjective, but rather objective based off of the reviewers themselves, how they're rating features, what they're talking about the software, and satisfaction. Next, about how G2 powers customer-led growth. This is relevant for startups as buyers are more educated than ever, which we'll talk about in a little bit. It's really, really important to be found, to be heard in the buyer journey. And buyers are more often than not coming to review sites to at least get initial insights all the way through their discovery, evaluation, and research phases, leaning on that peer feedback, generating reviews from your early adopter customers, people that have learned the value of your product early to kind of help accelerate that growth, help build credibility and differentiation, especially in this crowded market. With the advent of Gen AI and AI in general, I know generative AI has been around a short time. AI, machine learning, has been around quite some time. We're seeing more products enter the marketplace now. Differentiation and having a kind of leading brand is going to be a key driver to generate revenue and accelerate growth. Over 90 million people come to G2 annually. So really, having visibility on G2, well, on Google, this is a kind of a great way to kind of grow traffic organically to your website, also to your G2 profile, so you can be found. Tony hinted at it. G2 also provides kind of buyer intent. So understanding where your prospects are looking. Are they looking at your competitors? Are they looking at your category? So you can meet them in their buyer journey. And last, as I said, 100% peer review using reviews from real users. So you can kind of gain insight into what you're doing well, what you're doing poorly at, areas to improve, as well as kind of the whole competitive landscape. What people are talking about your competitors' products, maybe what they're disliking in competitors' products in order to give you a competitive advantage, better position your product, and with the goal always in the end to kind of accelerate growth and revenue. Next, I want to talk about buyer behavior trends from our most recent buyer behavior report. The buyer journey is different than it was many years ago. On marketing, they talk about first touch attribution, last touch attribution. There's so many different steps in the buyer's journey now that it's hard to pinpoint one specific stage. Buyers are more educated. They're being more self-discovery, kind of leading the charge. So it's almost a buyer-led sales motion now, more so than a seller's-led sales motion. So that's really important when we talk about, like, with startups on how to accelerate growth. is being where your buyers are at and almost being an assistant to the buyer in their journey to help them solve their problems rather than being an outbound spam machine. In the last couple of years, there's been economic headwinds, a lot of layoffs in SaaS in general, a lot of scrutinization in terms of budget. CFOs are usually brought into deals now that maybe in the past it wouldn't kind of warrant executive approval. But no need to fear. In our last buyer behavior report, we actually found kind of optimism in this, in that over half of buyers are actually gearing up to spend more in 2025 than in 2024, with another 42% spending the same, and then 6% noting that spending would decrease. I think this is really important, especially with the genesis of Gen AI. People are hoping to be early adopters to that technology to accelerate their growth. So although there might be more scrutinization in budgets, people are trying to consolidate tech tools, especially in sales tech. There's kind of a big push for this all-in-one platform in various kind of domains. People aren't afraid to spend if it kind of warrants the result, if you get the ROI. And, I think that's even being heightened even more so with 57% of buyers stating that they expect ROI within 3 months, which, as you can think about, if we talk about 10, 15 years ago, very typical for the first 3 months of after buying a product, it wouldn't even be implemented. Expectations are increasing with buyers, stating the need to receive that ROI very early on. So really important when during your sales motions that you're being collaborative with the buyer, you're setting expectations, kind of like value selling to align a timeline to see value realization. So when renewals come up, you can more tangibly state your ROI and your kind of impact on their organization. I wanted to talk about kind of what's influencing buyers. If we look at the small business segment here, which I think is kind of most relevant to this audience, integrations are the number one factor. You want your tech stack to be fully integrated. You want data to sync versus tools. You don't want tool hopping, especially reps or early founders juggling 15 different tools. Make sure that data is synced across tools so you can kind of have a single source of truth. Security is next. With heightened breaches that we've seen, security is paramount. And next, third, I'm surprised it's third, is scalability, especially with small businesses. As we look to scale growth, you want to implement solutions and processes that can grow with your business, so you don't have to revisit tooling every new milestone. And I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about AI a little bit and about how important it is. Buyers say AI is important across nearly every solution, especially with marketing, sales, and customer service kind of being at the forefront there. And taking a look at sales, we have 36% saying it's very important, 39% saying it's important. So I think there's a lot of FOMO there and people want to take advantage of those AI capabilities. So it's kind of at the forefront there. If you're selling an AI product, ensure that buyers understand the value that the AI has, that what it's doing, rather than just kind of buzzword marketing stamping AI on everything. It's really important to kind of educate the buyers on what the AI is, what it's doing, and how it could impact their business. Speaking to why brand matters, and how G2 can kind of help there is a strong preference nowadays more than ever for kind of a self-service motion among buyers. As you can see here, 83% of respondents stated that they want some or all of the discovery phase to be self-service, 81% of the research phase, and then trickling down a little bit more. Surprising that even 76% said implementation they'd like to be self-serve. I think this might be for some of the smaller point solution products and not kind of the large, robust CRMs. And what I found was shocking is that 69% of buyers say they usually engage with the salesperson only when they've made their decision. This kind of speaks to the next point there, where shortlists are shrinking. Almost 50% of respondents had 1 to 3 products on their shortlist, which is a 16% increase from the last year. And then almost a third of respondents said they had 4 to 7 products on their shortlist. So really emphasizing that by the time a prospect gets to you, they've already kind of narrowed down their shortlist. They know kind of what they're looking at. Maybe they're between 3 products and they're in the final stages in terms of what integrates better, what might be more scalable. So it's so important to kind of have a brand presence there so the buyer can easily find you in their journey, compare you to alternatives, and you can kind of differentiate rather than kind of hoping that you can enter their shortlist during the decision phase because you might be already too late. So really kind of underscoring the importance that in this saturated market of B2B SaaS now, especially with new products coming up every day, brand matters more than everything. And, we've seen a lot of success, especially with early startups, founder-led marketing, founder-led sales, really having like an owned media audience to help kind of drive that brand, as well as be on people's minds when they look for solutions to their pain points. Next, I want to talk about some consideration factors for implementing generative AI. Obviously, every organization, large, small, medium, is talking about how they can leverage generative AI to help kind of accelerate growth. But a lot of people are stuck and don't really know how to start. Understandably so, with kind of the plethora of solutions out on the market, solving different use cases and so many other consideration factors. But I've kind of boiled it down to three things when it relates to kind of sales effectiveness. One, identify your pain points, identify your inefficiencies in places that AI could help fix or alleviate some of the problem. I would dare to say that when it comes to the sales process, sales team, sales management, there's going to be some type of AI that can help alleviate the pain point, but it's really important to identify where that is for your organization, for your process, and for your growth stage currently. Next, identify how much tolerance you have to risk within those pain points. Since we're so early on in generative AI, there's going to be flaws, there's going to be blemishes. Generative AI is not perfect. So understanding the risks associated with each application and implementation of generative AI and how tolerant you are to the risk. If you are very early on and you have a large TAM and not a lot of brand presence, maybe you're more willing to risk giving your outbound sales motions to an AI BDR because that is your problem. You don't have a lot of awareness and you're willing to kind of take that risk. So there's a lot by identifying how tolerant you are to risk that can help kind of expose where you might be willing to implement generative AI. And last, but almost most important, ensure you have a strong data strategy. You can get accurate data, it can be enriched, and it can be scaled. AI is only as good as the data it's trained on and the data it has access to. So if you don't have a strong data foundation or a strategy on ensuring that can be continually refreshed in real time, AI is only going to amplify those data problems. So when looking to kind of implement these solutions, make sure that it is something that can be scaled and it is something that can have clean and accurate data continuously. Other just two stats from our buyer behavior report that I thought were interesting, specifically for the sales and marketing software. We saw this similarly with the small business segment for all softwares, but integration is the number one consideration. With so much tool switching for reps, with so much siloed data, it's really important for tools to integrate, to learn off each other. And again, when we talk about AI, the more data it has, the more business context it has, the better it'll perform. So it's really imperative that your systems interoperate. And that's why it's kind of seen here that integrations are kind of the number one consideration. And next, we talked about ROI. Everybody wants, or 57% want ROI in 3 months. When we're looking at AI investment, sometimes it's a little hard to quantify AI's impact and the return on investment. But in our buyer behavior report, we found that the number one method for measuring ROI for AI investments was employee productivity. So whether that is decreasing speed to lead, talking to your inbound leads faster, whether that's generating marketing content, collateral quicker, increasing that employee productivity allows you to spend that time elsewhere. So spending time that may be on areas that you're not willing to risk generative AI and you want some more human touch there. So interesting things to consider when you're looking to implement. Next, I wanted to talk about some top use cases and challenges. First, we'll talk about the G2 data here on the right from G2's buyer behavior report. The use cases across business sizes, honestly, fairly similar across all business sizes. Small business customer support was number one, seeing a lot of growth there in a lot of kind of startups as well as incumbent vendors. Zendesk, Intercom, Sierra is a booming startup, already a unicorn valuation, kind of automating a lot of that customer support quicker, easier, and then, trained on your business context. Also, number two, improve overall efficiency. So again, small businesses might have limited resources, smaller headcounts. So enabling AI to kind of work as your companion, as your coworker to help expedite the process so you can focus on the many tasks that startups have. And then third, marketing. Marketing is in generative AI, even Scott Brinker's latest Martech report, content creation, content production were the top two use cases for generative AI. As we can see, that generative AI is really good at kind of creating or testing marketing materials, seeing what's worked in the past. So no surprise here to see that be one of the top use cases. Next, to look at some McKinsey data that I also found interesting. B2B sales leaders see a range of benefits from deploying generative AI. Funny enough, the number one at 24% was growing efficiency. So saving employees time, kind of validating what that G2's buyer behavior report said about employee productivity, speeding up processes, whether that's data automation, data entry, making sure all the data is synchronized from your conversation intelligence tool, your call recordings that you had with customers, making sure it's synced to the CRM, making sure you kind of have a unified view of everything, boosting top line growth at 22%. So whether that's ways to increase sales, gain market share. The third, tied at 22%, was enhancing the customer experience. Oftentimes the best product doesn't win, the best experience might. So really providing more personalization towards the prospect, faster response times. We'll see that in some of the agentic products that we'll cover later in this presentation, or the kind of tools that help the buyer experience as well, which we'll talk about later. And then lastly, improving margins, lowering costs, improving pricing. So by kind of deploying some of this generative AI, you might be able to either reduce headcount or hold off on expanding headcount. And then lastly, nurturing innovation. So whether that's ideating, whether that's creating additional marketing material, those are kind of the top use cases based off this McKinsey study, which align very well with G2's data, as well as kind of what I'm seeing in the market as well. And then next, I wanted to highlight, instead of talking, purely all glory and good, I want to highlight a couple challenges based off this McKinsey study. So it says that generative AI high performers report experiencing a range of challenges from capturing value from the technology, given it so early on. And what I found most interesting is that data is the number one challenge. Everybody wants to leverage generative AI. As I said previously, it's only as good as the data is trained on, and more importantly, the context of your business. So over 70% of respondents of the high performers said that data was their largest issue. So again, when looking to implement this, make sure you have a strong data strategy about how the generative AI can learn from your data, as well as kind of learn over time as the startups get more and more data, learn better about their ICP, learn better about their customer base and what pain points they may have. And then wanted to start by just highlighting some tools that are going to be focused on improving efficiency and sales effectiveness. And then the second half of this presentation is going to focus on some AI-infused tools that help the buyer experience, help transform the buyer experience. So this is the G2's AI sales assistant category. On the left is kind of the small business view. So all of these scores are based on reviewers who are in that small business segment. And then on the right is a live momentum grid, so showing what products year over year have had the most growth in terms of satisfaction increases, reviews, employee growth, revenue growth, a lot of kind of external factors there. So really interesting to see here. One is the amount of products on this. We are seeing incumbent vendors add AI features, whether it be Salesforce, HubSpot, ZoomInfo, et cetera, but also a plethora of new challenger platforms, for lack of a better term. And if we look at this momentum grid here on the right, we can see some kind of notable names. Instantly is kind of gaining a lot of momentum with some of their email deliverability work, in addition to their kind of leads and sales engagement capabilities, as well as Apollo, kind of, in the last year alone, I think has released so many new features, whether it's some signal work, whether it's kind of automating outbound further, adding conversation intelligence, just a plethora of solutions to kind of be that all-in-one hub for a lot of small businesses, as well as Fathom, which is kind of going after the conversation intelligence category with Gong, and even Humantic, which you can see here, which is like a behavioral and personality insights product. So you can kind of get an edge up on the sales conversation before you meet with them, learn what personality the prospect is like, what they dislike. So kind of, getting a leg up on the conversation so you're well armed and prepared for it.
Hey, Blue, quick question on that. Have you noticed, I don't know if you have this kind of data handy, but have you noticed certain trends in terms of adoptions of these AI sales assistant platforms amongst smaller companies, the SMB market, startups compared to larger companies?
Yeah, I don't have the exact data offhand, but I have seen that there is an uptick in SMB adoption, especially because given the almost like commoditization of a lot of these sales products, price point is it's reducing in a competitive advantage for a lot of these products. So whether they offer freemium versions of their product that are more lightweight, or again, kind of the race to the all-in-one consolidated platform, most notably with like Apollo, it's really allowing small businesses at a fraction of the cost to receive a lot more capabilities. So rather than buying 15 disjointed tools, so many platforms out there are trying to be kind of the all-in-one solution there. So, and that's helped geared towards that SMB market as well.
Okay.
So first I want to talk about a little bit more of a legacy category, if you will, conversation intelligence. Everybody most notably knows this as kind of Gong kind of spearheading this back in the day. This is a small business grid that you see here on the left, but what these tools do is they transcribe your calls into text so they can be searched and analyzed, identifying keywords, themes, action items, keyword on action items there so you can help kind of automate the follow-up post call, provide statistics, talk ratio, customer interactivity, call duration. Those are more kind of geared towards the coaching and managerial lens. But I think the points 1 and 2 are kind of most pertinent for startups. So kind of as you're jumping from call to call, you might not have time to write down notes. This kind of streamlines the whole process. I would also note it's really important that it integrates with your CRM or whatever your system of record is. So we can automate data capture. You can have all of the intelligence and data stored in one location, keep it up to date, as well as help kind of expedite that follow up, expedite the meeting prep for the next time when it's what did I talk to them about? It's all in a centralized location and seeing kind of a lot of, to your point, Tony, or to your question about like, are SMBs kind of using this? This is a software market that I think has kind of exploded in the last 5 years. I wrote a blog about it on it last year about how almost every kind of sales platform is either acquired or built in their own conversation intelligence features because people know that customer conversations are so valuable. It's how you iterate your product, it's how you learn and grow. So being able to kind of capture that feedback and allow AI to parse through it to identify themes, trends, competitors mentioned, value props given, pain points said by the prospect is kind of really a big crucial step. So I think there's a lot of free options in this category. There's a lot of products that offer conversation intelligence with addition to other things. So this is kind of a very growing market. And I would say almost an easy win if you're looking to kind of accelerate growth or capture key insights. Next is the AI writing assistant category. And this is a category that has kind of blown up since the Chat GPT and generative AI kind of boom. And it's because, as I said previously, marketing content ideation and creation are one of the top use cases for generative AI. So, using these tools help accelerate branding and content creation. As I said, buyers' journey is becoming buyer-led, not sales-led. So it's imperative that you have content that speaks to the buyers. So, understanding your ICP, what pain points each particular kind of like tier of account has, you can leverage these AI writing assistant tools to streamline personalization, email follow-up in a lot of different ways, whether it's scraping through various sources or whether it's just saying, how can I simply state my value proposition to somebody in a regulated industry or something like that. So really kind of tiering or personalizing your communication and your content to kind of relate the most. And I think an interesting trend that we'll see here is a lot of the players in the space, particularly on this right grid, we'll see kind of throughout the presentation, as this was kind of maybe one of their first entry points into some AI features and now have kind of expanded. Next, auto dialers, not new, but kind of transforming a lot in the last 12 months. Perhaps if you're, a company of one, this might not be a requisite for you, but if you have 1 to 2 reps and, all you want them doing is kind of talking to customers or prospects, this might be something good to consider. There's kind of been a shift in this dialer market to not just be a dialer, whether it's predictive dialing, parallel dialing, but doing a lot more so. They're investing in conversation intelligence features, meeting prep features. So scraping maybe a prospect's LinkedIn to say what they just talked about. So as you're smiling and dialing, you can have a little bit of intelligence kind of right at your fingertips rather than trying to quickly kind of Google around as it's ringing. So this is an area that has kind of grown a lot, and with the blasting of emails and everybody worried about email deliverability, rotating inboxes, warming them up, trying to spray and pray with kind of resonating. It's almost, some people are finding success with zigging when others zag. So almost being more heavy on the phone and getting that kind of human touch might be a good way to differentiate yourself and kind of build those relationships. Next, I wanted to talk about what I call signal aggregation platforms. Think of these as almost like the next generation of sales intelligence. We'll talk about the AI BDRs and like the almost autopilot ways next, but this is almost like a key co-pilot. So what these signal aggregation platforms do is they aggregate signals both at the account level and the contact level. They help companies prioritize and score the signals based on the combination of them, as well as the ICP information that you provide them to allow kind of precise targeting and understanding kind of a higher probability or propensity to buy or at least engage with you. Some provide native identity resolution at the contact or account level, such as, who's visiting my website. This is particularly useful in the US, or, what account is comparing solutions on G2. Also, what's really interesting here is the waterfall enrichment that's been going on. So, by leveraging some of these platforms, instead of having two or managing multiple different data providers, leveraging their waterfall enrichment to get accurate contact information, using the signals, the aggregated signals most pertinently to help assist in personalizing the outreach so you can speak your buyer's language. Again, and then, lastly, what kind of a differentiator among these solutions is they help automate workflows for outreach engagement. Some do this natively, such as like Unify. So you don't need another product to push those automated outbound sequences. Some do it through integrations, Common Room, Clay, et cetera. So you might still need a sales engagement platform to help kind of execute those. And the intelligence is given here. So that's kind of something to look out for, depending on what tool stack you're using now, what signals are most important to you. There's a plethora of signals, and I would really encourage you all to learn about what first, second, or third party signals might be most relevant or successful to your business, whether that's people changing jobs, people raising funds, insights from an earnings call or 10K. Maybe they've identified strategic priorities that your solution might be a good fit for. Job openings, where are they hiring? Where are they looking to grow their business? Leadership changes. We all know that when new C-suite comes in, that like the first 3 to 6 months is when they're going to consider changing tech. So when there's new leadership there, that might be a good kind of avenue to engage to see if what they're kind of considering, what tech stack they're using, what they're advertising in their job postings in terms of what tech they're using is all kind of great information to help you speak the prospect's language. And what a lot of these solutions do, which I think is kind of so critical or a great use case of generative AI, is account research. So instead of reps trying to scrape the web manually in between calls, many of these tools provide account and contact level research. So you can kind of speak the buyer's language instead of generic sales lingo and sending them an email saying like, oh, do you want to grow your sales by 50%? Well, a lot of customers have had success using our product doing that. Everybody wants to grow sales by 50%, right? So, speak their language. What are they talking about on LinkedIn? What are their bosses talking about on LinkedIn? Because even if they're not talking about it, if their bosses are, I'm sure they're going to be worried and focus on that as well. So really, again, speaking their language and solving their problems, I think now with it being a buyer-led sales journey, it's really important to almost be a companion in their journey rather than a aggressive seller just trying to, feature sell. You really need to be a value seller. I would also say ensure these tools can be integrated with your CRM, can continuously enrich your data and have bidirectional sync. A lot of these tools do this. There are also additional tools such as like Full Enrich, which will do the enrichment itself as well. But it's really imperative that the more context and information you can have around your prospect, almost like painting a picture with different flavors, the better you can engage with your prospect, which in turn is going to help resonate with them. It's going to be able to it's going to be able to have you tell your prospects a better story about how you can solve their problems. And then in turn, it's going to close deals. I would say this is one of the hottest topics in B2B sales right now. We're seeing kind of a top down and a bottoms up approach from vendors entering into the space. You have incumbents from like traditional sales intelligence, like ZoomInfo, Apollo venturing into it, even incumbents from the ABM space, Sixth Sense and Demand Base, trying to do that whole kind of full fledged ABM motion, as well as the new challenger players that you can see here. But again, my one kind of key consideration here would be trying to identify what signals would work for you. If you have a website that's heavily trafficked, maybe you just need a website identity visitor identification tool like RB2B. Do you have a large network and people have used your solutions or trust you in the past and maybe are job switching? Champify and user gems help kind of track those jobs. Or if you're looking for more holistic, kind of a lot of the tools on the top half of that graph on the right help kind of combine various signals. So I think it's best to use a combination of signals, but for early age startups, perhaps identifying one that works well and kind of scaling from there in terms of help kind of prioritizing.
Hey, Blue, a question on this category. Do you have any recommendations or things that you noticed that will help someone determine whether or not some of these platforms have the reach or the breadth of data that is pertinent to their markets, as well as the level of accuracy of data that they have?
Yeah, great question. I think to first talk about the level of accuracy. I think what's really interesting about this is the waterfall enrichment. So as you can see, like the traditional sales intelligence players are venturing into this space. They are, everybody says they're 99% data accuracy. Hot news, nobody's 99% accurate in their data. And if they were today, then they won't be tomorrow because that's how quick these things change. So what's really interesting is these new players that are aggregating data providers from various sources. So instead of being 100% reliant on one data provider, like some of these incumbents might be, kind of unifying various ones. So I use phone ready leads for my phone data. I use ZoomInfo for my email data. Kind of stacking those up is kind of a great way. Also, in terms of identifying the accuracy and availability, on G2, we ask feature questions to reviewers, and in sales intelligence, email and phone, technographic, all those are questions asked in terms of the availability as well as the accuracy. So go to G2, compare the different solutions and see how those features are rated against each other, I would say is a great starting point.
Cool. Thank you.
So we talked about co-pilots. Time to talk about autopilots. I'm sure you guys have kind of seen them. AI BDRs, some of them AI SDRs. I think that's more of an inbound kind of notion, but really outbound sales agents. Here are some of the players in the space now, but again, new ones popping up every day. So I made this slide deck a few days ago and it's outdated. So happy to stay connected and kind of keep abreast of the new and innovative tech there. But what these do is that they have large data sets that identify accounts and contacts to target. Hint, ensure you have informed it of your ICP so it can narrow its focus. I would say it's better to aim small and miss small than kind of spray and pray. So it can gather baseline account and contact information. It can create and automate personalized outreach content through various channels, email, SMS, WhatsApp. Some are even venturing into phone, maybe regulations there to come. It can respond to prospects' questions quickly, and then with the goal of kind of scheduling meetings to drive pipeline. Some risks to consider, which again kind of goes back to my earlier point of like, identifying your tolerance to risk. Because of the volume of emails that these can send, if you don't put tight guardrails on them, there's risk to damage your email deliverability. If you have a small TAM, there's risk of harming your brand if you're just kind of spraying and praying throughout your whole addressable market. So really important to ensure that there's guardrails in place in terms of both the autonomy of these bots as well as kind of the volume of them. Really work on having precise targeting and messaging and have that be differentiated based off your ICP and maybe the different segments within that. Not all segments are the same. They care about different things. And then given the nature of outbound's been hard. It has been hard. It was hard. It is hard, and it will be hard. So just setting expectations, and then when certain triggers go off, ensure that you can have an efficient avenue to bring a human in the loop. So whether that's like 3 questions they're showing, or 3 responses, 1 response, they're showing engagement. Identify when the right time is to kind of bring yourself into the conversation to help kind of expedite that. I would say if you sell low ACV products and you have a large TAM, and especially for like if you're targeting small businesses, this might be a good solution to consider. If you're going up market, if you're looking for mid-market and enterprise businesses, so most likely higher ACV, this is going to be a little bit more difficult and maybe a consideration factor you should think of. These enterprise companies have large buying committees. Multi-threading is needed to succeed. So if you have a lower TAM and selling really high value contracts, you might not want to spray and pray your whole TAM. So something to consider if you're kind of very transactional business, this might be good to help kind of automate the process.
To what you just mentioned just now is a great
Yeah.
point, as well as the last bullet point about humans in a loop. Have you noticed any trends in terms of whether or not people or companies are adopting these AI agents in lieu of bringing on board team or scaling their like human team, for lack of a better word, or are you seeing more of just still retaining, let's say, human SDRs or BDRs, but also supplementing them with these AI agents? Have you noticed any trends around adoption of these tools?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something really interesting, and it's still early on, so it's hard to exactly pinpoint. I have seen it's almost these work well with prioritization. So maybe instead of hiring 10 more BDRs to focus on the SMB segment, you're going to have your existing sales team focus on mid-market enterprise ones with higher ACVs, and then you're going to augment your small business segment that you're targeting with these autonomous agents. So have the agents focus on the lower value target, maybe which has a wider kind of customer base, and then instead augmenting there, and then having your actual humans focus on the higher value ones. So still a little bit of a mix. And we've seen some studies that they might be generating a lot of pipe, not a lot of close one. Other studies that they have done close one. So it kind of really depends on how transactional your product is, how much explanation is it to need, how much you have to educate your prospects on the value and for them to learn the value, or is it kind of glaringly obvious? So I think those are all kind of consideration factors there. If you're selling a really complex product, I don't think an AI BDR is going to close one a bunch of deals. You're going to need humans there. And next, I want to talk about the inbound sales agents. This is something that I'm particularly bullish on, especially if you have a lot of inbound traffic, which is kind of goes back to the earlier point of why, especially in the startup world, founder-led marketing is so key, really growing your brand, owning your audience so people come to your website. But these are great at quickly engaging and nurturing, routing inbound leads, chatting with them via website chat, like an old glorified chatbot with just a little bit better skills, knows a little bit more, or email. Really important, again, as you can see a theme throughout: integration, that these tools integrate with your CRM so you can have a complete history of your prospect that you're talking to. You don't have to start from, it's not a first date every interaction, right? You can remember what happened on the first date, move on to the second, and keep learning. And then with the goal of course, scheduling meetings, converting MQLs to pipeline. Things to consider here: you need a volume of inbound leads. If you don't have a lot of inbound leads, then there's no point in kind of automating that process. I would instead take a step back and say, maybe we need to work on our brand and marketing, founder-led sales, creating content on LinkedIn. Just allowing more avenues for buyers to find you is going to be very vital. So you can be, top of mind for shortlist. But if you're a small team and you got a good brand and you see a lot of traffic, people aren't filling out lead forms maybe on your website, this might be a good kind of solution to help kind of accelerate that into converting it into pipeline.
Cool.
And next, I wanted to talk about tools that transform the buyer experience. As I said, not always the best product wins, the best experience often does. Demo automation, which last year was G2's fastest growing category in terms of traffic, has really seen so much innovation in the space and utilization of generative AI. I kind of distilled them down into 3 primary use cases, and you'll be seeing more research from me in this space in the future. But interactive product tours, probably the most common use case, really low barrier to entry, a lot of freemium products here. So I would really urge you guys to try them. We talked about generating interest, converting leads on your website. This is a great way to start. So essentially what these do is produce product tours, whether through HTML capture, screenshots, video capture, but allowing your prospects to click through your product, to understand the pain points solving, to understand a little bit about how they work in like, a 10 to 15 step kind of click through on the website. Next is live demos. So showing like a live version of your product with synthetic or overlaid data in like a clone demo environment. This is really good, and it allows demoers, especially if you're a founder and you're doing all the sales calls, all the demos, all the everything, to tailor the demo to the prospect needs quickly and with relevance. So based off their use case, based off their industry, based off their geographic area, maybe. But it really helps better serve live demonstrations. They can showcase better data, real data, instead of everything saying acme.com and, oh, just pretend that this number was moving and that you had $1 million in sales. You can actually in real time kind of show that data so you can tell a better story. And last, POC sandbox automation. This is particularly good for complex products, but really providing like a lightweight proof of concept or sandbox environment to allow prospects to have like a trial like experience. Really good for highly complex products or industries where sales cycles might be highly scrutinized or elongated sales cycles, kind of enabling your prospect to see and feel them. As I said, buyers are seeking more self-service options than ever. So instead of saying book a demo button on my website and then never hearing back or waiting 2 weeks, allowing them to first see, feel it, and kind of expedite that awareness journey. And again, yeah, the best experience often wins, not necessarily the best prospects. So being top of mind, learning with your prospects and providing them avenues, I've seen great success. And lastly, digital sales rooms. This is something I'm also bullish on with kind of the self-service journey that buyers want, with expanding buying committees, especially when you go up market, providing kind of one avenue, one resource for your champion to broadcast internally, to gain other people's buy-in, to create mutual action plans together, to align on stages. These tools provide basically like a portal for you to share all of your tools in, even redlining contracts if you get to the later stages. It tracks prospect engagement, a little bit of intent data there, similar to like demo automation. You can get engagement analytics, so you know if they're viewing it, you know who's viewing it, you know what they are viewing, so therefore what resonates with them, what they care about. And it really provides an avenue for asynchronous communication and education. So you can chat with the prospects, they can comment saying, oh, do you have a case study that shows how this feature is valuable? And then AI is also being infused here too, to kind of auto suggest content. So say you're selling to a SMB tech company, they can provide content that has worked in previous instances in your sales for that kind of same segment. So really, again, kind of transforming the buyer experience. And yeah, so I think given the evolution of the buyer behavior, I think this is kind of a great resource to be an assistant to your buyer, not a preacher to your buyer. And then just some closing thoughts. Brand matters. Shortlists are shrinking. Buyers are more educated. Some don't want to talk to sales until they're already ready. So ensure your products and offerings can be found in the buyer's journey and assist them throughout. Buyer experience is paramount. Ensure you're providing an optimal buyer experience. Enable your prospects with self-service motions or to self-educate. And don't, with the plethora of solutions out there and a lot of them with low-cost options, don't allow small headcounts to impede your ability to provide the optimal buyer experience. And last but not least, understand your tolerance of risk. When you're implementing generative AI, do you want to be additive? Do you want to just help with content creation? Or do you want to be transformative? Understanding the scope of your generative AI implementation, understanding what you're willing to risk and where you have a strong scalability, that's going to really help kind of pinpoint where and how you can implement these new generative AI technologies. If you want to learn anything more, if you want to talk to me, I have many thoughts. Tony said I only had an hour today. I could talk for a lot more. And there's a lot of other use cases that we weren't even kind of able to touch today. So feel free to add me on LinkedIn, shoot me an email, shoot me a connection. Happy to chat and kind of learn from you, and as well as kind of tell you a little bit more about what I'm seeing in the B2B sales market.
Awesome. That's great. Fantastic overview. Thank you, Blue. We did have a question to come in earlier, which is, On several of your slides, you show the landscape and your version of the quadrant, for lack of a better term, a bunch of logos. Is there a way to decode what those logos are, which companies? So that's the question I was asked, but I'll ask a follow-on question. Is what would be your recommendation? I know you covered some of the key considerations, but like what would be your recommendation for, a busy founder trying to figure out how do we scale this go-to-market motion and what kind of tools make the most sense for us to utilize? Like, how do you navigate this massive landscape of all these different categories and selecting the right ones for you? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So to answer your first question, if you go to the category page of any G2, you can look at the grid, hover over it, it'll actually show you the product. Also, if you want, I'll link them all in these slides as well. So if you reach out to me, I can send over this slide deck and then it'll kind of be embedded in there and you can hover over the different icons and learn about the hundreds, if not thousands of products out there. In terms of how to select which one, $1 million question. I think you really need to, you can find an AI that will help any aspect of your business. So it's really identifying where you want to do and what you're willing to risk. I would say if you're selling a product that you think you can sell to the masses, large TAM, low ACV, and you're not generating enough leads, consider an AI BDR for a little bit. You don't have to be on it for 3 years. You can be on it for 6 months, see the success it's had. I would say most importantly, it all starts with branding and marketing, more like most importantly. So if you're a founder and you're like trying to get on this short list and accelerate growth, learn about how you can accelerate the content creation to build an audience and a brand so that people are coming to you rather than the inverse. Inbound leads are obviously the lowest hanging fruit. They've expressed interest. So, refining your ICP and then building content that relates to them, I think is kind of the start of the flywheel that's going to accelerate all the growth and different avenues to use.
Perfect. On one of your previous slides, you encourage people who aren't listed on G2 to do so. So what's the best way for, especially our startups, they're just getting started. What's the best way for them to list on G2?
Yeah, just go to g2.com. If your product's not on there, you'll see a form, say add my product, enter your URL, little description. 100% free to list on G2. That was kind of like the genesis of G2. Our founder and CEO had many successful products earlier, and he wasn't getting kind of the attention that he felt like he deserved. So this is really geared towards or really enables startups to have a brand and a presence at a minimal cost, and it's free to list on G2. So there's no harm. You can learn what people are saying about your product, good, bad, read competitors' reviews. So yeah, go to g2.com and click add my product at the bottom of the page.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, we are right up on time. So to wrap this up, a couple of next steps. So if any of you who are still with us would like to contact Blue, you could see his email address there and he'll respond to your message. And you could always reach out to me as well. If you are a Mucker portfolio company and need guidance on what tools to select, there's people on our team that can help you. Definitely talk to your investor or Mucker advisor to cover that. If there is any specific topic that you would like for us to cover in the future, let us know, and we would love to kind of get a better idea of what interests you in terms of what challenges, what problems, what questions you have. And so definitely email us. You can email the email address here at Britton@Mucker Capital. You can email myself. You can email my colleague Daniela, who is sort of in the background here. Just let us know what you're interested in. We have a couple of sessions and topics identified through the beginning of next year. So we won't reveal what those are just yet. We'll keep the suspense up. But yes, definitely, if you have any particular topic or burning questions, let us know and we'll try to address those. And then lastly, if you are a founder and are looking for help, obviously, G2 is a great resource. We're working with them very closely. But if you are a founder or to either raise capital or join an accelerator program, which Mucker Capital does provide, I encourage you to go and submit an application on Mucker's website. I know it says mucker.com/accelerator. Even if you're not interested in an accelerator program and are looking for investment, but beyond just investment, we really pride ourselves on helping and partnering with our founders to help them scale their company, definitely submit an application there. And of course, I mentioned on the first slide or second slide that if you like this content, we have other content we publish on a regular basis on our blog. Go and subscribe there. And again, there's no form other than filling out your email to subscribe to receive our content. So that will keep you up to date, all the things we're going to be publishing in the future. This is fantastic. Thank you again, Lou, for joining us. Yeah, super helpful. And this wraps up our final growth series session for the year. And I'm glad for those of you guys who are with us. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, everyone.